Hey guys, welcome back. It's Josh with the Financial Advisor Car Guide. It is a beautiful, sunny Saturday morning. It's cold, but it's beautiful, and the sun is out. So I finally was able to get in touch with my friend Vern, who's kind of my mechanic. He is coming over. He's on his way over right now to work on this thing. We are going to get my transmission in, and I'm excited. I'm very excited. It's been more than a year since I've been able to drive the car. I put it up and off the lift. I took it down off the lift and drove it out into my driveway about a year ago, and decided that the car was not shifting reliably enough to drive. So I literally backed it back up onto the lift, put it up in the air, disconnected the battery, and there it has sat. So it's covered in dust, and yeah, dang, it's just not been looked at or talked about or really worked on at all in the last year. In fact, the last time I had the car running, I filmed a video for you guys. So that would have been like 50 something weeks ago. You can go back through my videos and figure it out, but I want to say that was episode 6, 7, or 8, something like that. And here we are at episode 60. So thank you guys for bearing with me and hanging in there. But yeah, once this transmission gets in and going, I can start driving the car again. And the other exciting thing about getting that transmission done is that means I can drive it over to my buddy Jeff's house, who's going to do the paint work on the roof. So hopefully this car is going to be the forefront of my content for the next few weeks. If we don't do full episodes about it, that's okay. I'll at least kind of give you the quick update each time if I can, or if there is an update. And then obviously we'll show you the progress and keep you posted. So he should be here any minute, and we're going to dive right in. All right, guys, I'm gonna give you a quick update. Here's the transmission on the ground over there. You can see some fluid that's dripped. Here's the new transmission ready to go back in, along with the new torque converter and all the new fluid and the jack and everything, and we're getting ready to go. We'll kind of walk over here real quick and look underneath. Let's see here. So there's the gaping hole where the transmission's gonna go. I'm gonna actually black all that out. I've got some rubberized undercoating. I'm gonna spray all this so it looks a little cleaner, and then we'll get it all bolted back together. So the project kind of stalled a little bit, and as you can see, the car is back up here, the Audi's underneath. We did get the transmission in. I have since driven the car. It's been about 3 weeks now. So I owe you guys a big apology. I know I told you 2 or 3 episodes ago, next episode is gonna be the transmission. I might've said that 2 episodes in a row, in fact. That's not the case. Really what ended up happening was the transmission got put back in, I test drove it, put the car away, never finished the video. So that was again, like 2.5 or 3 weeks ago. So I wanted to let you know that the transmission is in, it does work. I do need to adjust a little bit of the throttle kick down. It runs perfect, but it still has a little bit of a problem shifting. So it's kind of acting like the old transmission. It's still, I can tell it's running better, but the RPMs are running up and it's not auto shifting. So I was talking to my guy Vern, and he tells me that the kick down needs to be adjusted, and it shouldn't take more than just a few minutes of tweaking and then trying to drive it, and then a few minutes of tweaking again if necessary. But he's very confident that it's just something simple and that the car is gonna be done and ready to drive this summer. So that's super, super exciting. Other than that, I did underneath the transmission or above the transmission, take some spray and bed liner, and I did clean all that stuff up. I bed lined the underside of the car. It looks 1,000 times better. It looks so much cleaner, and that's exciting to me because that was always kind of an eyesore. And even here in my garage, if I don't have the Audi underneath there, if I walk underneath the Mustang and I look up, it's never been beautiful. Now it's much better. It's clean, it's black, all the things. So I'm really pleased about that. That was one of the first things I wanted to do when I got the lift up and the car in there. Just never got around to it. So, life happens and things don't always go the way you think. It did take me a bit of time to get back around to it, but we're there. So everything's been painted underneath the car. The new transmission is in. Everything appears to be working with the exception of a couple of adjustments. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is, just a couple other things about the car. I went ahead and wired some sequential taillights. You're gonna see that right here. Now what those taillights are going to do, as you can see, they click from the center out. So the blinkers on both the left and the right, as well as the brake lights. The brake lights, when you step on it, the center lights come on, then the next, then the out. So it's a very cool sequence. And then they stay illuminated until I take my foot off the brake. So it just sequentials one time. But if you're using the turn signals, they'll sequential until you turn off the blinker. So very cool upgrade. I had to figure out the wiring. It was a kind of a nightmare. This car has whatever 60-year-old, not quite, 55-year-old wiring in it. And there was still the original wiring to those taillights. And so without the car running, I don't know if the voltage, it's a strange thing because the car's got a brand new battery. I put a brand new battery in it at the same time as the transmission. I don't know if it was like a voltage issue, but the middle bulb on the driver's side wouldn't blink. I was having a terrible time. It was just skipping. It was the inner one and then the outer one. And sometimes the middle bulb would illuminate, but it wouldn't blink and it would be faded, really dull. The passenger side 3 lights worked like a charm every time, never a problem. But what's strange is I started the car up. I don't even recall why. I think I was just gonna drive it around the block and try to play with the blinkers a little bit. And when the car was running, that taillight worked perfectly fine. So I'm not exactly sure. I do need to investigate it a little further, but at this point it's working, and so that is good. The other piece of that I found while digging into that, I had to use a new flasher, and the flasher module that I used is designed to work with the sequentials. So I can turn a dial, I have to unscrew a case, but there's a dial inside, and I can control how fast the sequentials go. So they can blink slow, or they can blink fast if I want them to. So it's just getting the timing right. I kind of split the difference and went with a very moderate setting. It's not as fast as they can go. It's not as slow as they can go. I didn't want to do it super fast because the point of the sequentials, I thought, is the cool look of the true sequential light. And if it's too fast, you may miss it, especially on the brake. So I didn't do that. But what I did do is when I was wiring in the new flasher, I noticed that my brake switch was needing cleaning and also adjusting. If I stepped on the brake, now I'll explain real quick. The brake switch is a reverse switch. So by default, it is on, more or less. When you step on the brake, it relieves the tension of the switch, and that's when the brake lights come on. So it's a reverse switch. You step on something, it relieves the switch pressure, turns the lights on. Okay, so imagine a push button starter. Okay, imagine it's always pushed in, right? It's not exactly the way it works, but let's say it's always pushed in. The moment you let out, whatever it is happens. So a brake switch is the same thing. Well, anyway, the long story short, the brake switch had needed readjusted. It had a lot of corrosion and crud in there, just dirt, not really corrosion, but dirt and things had been in there. So if I stepped on the brake, it lit up just fine. When I took my foot off the pedal, sometimes the lights would stay lit. So that just means the switch itself wasn't activating correctly. It still thought that there was a space or a gap from the pedal to the switch, and that just wasn't the case. So I had to adjust the location of that switch after cleaning it all out. And so we've got that situation figured out. There were a couple times when I'd walk away from the car, when, like in prior summers or whatever, when I would drive the car to work or to the grocery store or to a car show even, I would jump out and start to walk away and my taillights were still on. My brake light was still on. So I have to get back in the car and like stomp on the brake pedal for a moment until, it figured itself out, and then the lights would turn off. I didn't know how simple a fix that was going to be. I knew it was something in the brake switch, but I didn't know exactly what it was and what that entailed. So just a simple cleaning and adjustment solved my issue. I didn't have to replace anything. But I did do the new sequential flasher and then all the new sequential wiring and boxes in the taillights. So that was a very big success. I also completed an oil change. I did it right here on the lift, which is fantastic. I mean, geez, it's so great to have this thing. I'm thrilled to have this lift because it makes working on the car, the underside, so much easier. We did the transmission, oil change, you know, I painted everything underneath there. Man, and then, yeah, the oil change and the new battery and things. So all that's coming along. The next real thing to happen to this car, I've got it going into a car show 2 weeks from Saturday, so 2 weeks from tomorrow. And basically the way that is looking is the car's either gonna go as it sits, I'm gonna wash it and detail it and whatnot, or I might enter the car as a fastback. I have that fiberglass top sitting right here on the ground. You kind of see a black thing right there. It's underneath that. That's just a cover. And, you know, basically I've got to call into my painter, Jeff, who did the rest of the car. He said he needs the whole car in running condition. He wants me to drive over there. He's going to get the top fitted, get it all dialed in. He's going to install my glass and my weather stripping and all the trim and all that stuff. He's going to get all that done. And he thinks it's only going to take a few days, 4 or 5 days. So I'm hopeful he can get me in. We were supposed to actually do that this week. I called him and haven't heard back. So I'm hoping he's all right. I've never gotten a reply, and generally he's very, very fast to answer the phone or answer a text. So hopefully he's all right. Waiting on him at this point. The car is ready to go to him. And so that's the next step. Hopefully the next time you see this car, it's gonna have a fastback top on it. And then I'm hoping to do a bunch more content. You know, like I said, we need to get that kick down adjusted so that I can drive the car reliably. It's not just gonna be stuck in first or second gear. It wants to go into reverse and all that just fine. Everything else seems to work fine. It's just, if it were a manual and I could, you know what I mean? It would be a lot different. But it wants to go into reverse. It wants to go into drive. When it's in drive, it just kind of stalls into shifting the next gear. And so I'm hopeful it is just a simple fix. What it turned out to be, and I don't know if I said this earlier, you know, again, this is like 3 weeks later from the opening part of this video. You know, it ended up being the torque converter was, I think, the issue with the transmission I had in the car. When we removed the transmission, pulled the torque converter off, I set the torque converter down and there was a very noticeable clunk. So I picked it up, sort of shook it a little bit, and you could actually hear metal. I wouldn't say metal shavings. It sounded like chunks inside there, just sloshing and clanking around. And so I have no idea what the innards of a torque converter looks like. I mean, we can Google it, but whatever was inside was broken. And I think that was really the cause of my problems. I kind of feel like that old transmission was totally fine now that I'm thinking about it the way we're, you know, after Vern and I talked about it. The torque converter probably was the source of my problems. And same thing, I think it just wasn't adjusted. The kickdown was not adjusted appropriately to work exactly for my car. We had to modify the shift linkage and all that stuff. And so I'm guessing it's just adjustments. And I don't think the last transmission was adjusted correctly. I already know that this one's not adjusted correctly. I really think that the problem I had with the last one was just that torque converter went bad. So the old transmission had an aluminum pan on it. So what we ended up doing was using that aluminum pan on the new transmission. It does hold an extra couple of quarts. It's lighter weight, whatever, it looks cooler. The only issue that I have with it is it hangs down another 1.5 inches or so more than the factory one did. So I do have to be mindful of driving over speed bumps and things like that because the pan nut, or the drain plug, so to speak, it hangs kind of low. So I just have to be mindful of that. And, you know, other than that, you couldn't tell that this is a new transmission. It looks identical. It's black where the other one was kind of a dirty gray. But other than that, I mean, it's the same. It's the same transmission out of the same style car, Fox Body 5.0 from the 80s or early 90s. And so that's the motor that's in the car. That's the transmission that's in the car. And then everything is adapted to work on the 68. You know, I took off all the fuel injection and went carbureted. And I wanted the vintage era correct look. So I have, you know, the Shelby valve cover and the Shelby air cleaner cover and all that stuff, you know, so it looks more vintage like a 68 Shelby would have. And so that's fantastic. I'm pleased with how it looks. I'm pleased with how it sounds and how it runs and all that stuff. But realizing that the engine, it's never really been fine-tuned the way it should be, kind of just went in and I started driving it. So my thoughts there are to dig in a little bit deeper, really figure out the ins and outs of what I need to do to kind of tweak it to a point where I can just jump in and drive it any day. The other thing that I wanted to kind of talk to you guys about is the car had been sitting for a year with fuel in the tank. So what I ended up doing was a couple different things. I went to the gas station and got 5 gallons of fresh gas. I don't know how much fuel was in the car. I would guess probably between 5 and 10 gallons. And I'm not exactly sure how big this tank is, but it took the full 5 gallons of fresh gas. I also put in an octane booster and a can of seafoam. And so with all that stuff running through the system, it revitalized and I would say fixed the issue of the old gas. Now, it's a climate controlled garage. It doesn't get really cold in here. It doesn't get really hot in here. It's a very room temperature. I mean, obviously when the garage door goes up, cold air comes in and vice versa. But for the most part, it's a climate controlled garage. So I wasn't worried about the gas being bad as just old. So it is very safe. So you guys know, right? It is very safe for you to dilute old gas as long as it's not, it's not like diesel where it gels up or anything like that. And it's not to a point where it's frozen or, it's gone through temperature changes dramatically. It's none of that stuff. If it's just been climate controlled, you can dilute it with fresh fuel and revitalize it. So obviously you don't want it to be too much less than a 1-to-1. You can, but you don't want it to be much less. So in my case, what I did was with the octane booster, the seafoam, and then 5 gallons of fresh fuel, got the car running and it runs fine. It runs great. But every opportunity I have, I'm going to top off the tank with fresh premium fuel just to continue to dilute what's in there. Because again, I don't know how much was in there to begin with. I was going to siphon it out and decided, you know what, at this point with gas being 5 whatever a gallon, if I can revitalize the old stuff and just drive the car and use it, I'd rather just do that. Plus it's easier. But yeah, I did a lot of research. I talked to a couple different people and that's really not uncommon. You can absolutely dilute old fuel to make it run well again. And that's what we did. So that's perfect. It works fine. It starts, it drives, no knocking, no craziness. Everything seems to be just fine. So what I might do is after I run through most of this tank, I might change my fuel filter just to make sure there's no contaminants or anything stuck in there. But beyond that, the car's pretty ready to go. So I'm waiting for Jeff to get back to me on timing for painting the top. But at a minimum, in 2 weeks, this car is off to its first show of the season, which is super, super exciting. It's been a long couple of years with very few car shows in between. And last year, I'm trying to remember, this car with the transmission the way it was, I haven't driven it in more than a calendar year now before this transmission. So that's exciting to me. I'll be able to use it again. Again, to and from work, on the weekends, whatever I choose, it'll be great. So that's fantastic. Otherwise, that's all I got. So like always, please like and subscribe, share this stuff, comment down below if you have any questions or concerns or you want to learn more about the Mustang. I also started an Etsy shop. I'm going to put a link right here with a screenshot. I have an Etsy shop with some Financial Advisor Car Guy merch. So my kids were giving me a hard time and said, you know what, legit YouTubers have merchandise. So I made some t-shirts, feel free, do not feel obligated, but they are there and they are available and they are fun. So I've got a couple of them for myself. I'd encourage you to take a look. So click right over there. And as always, may every investment you make be a good one. Till next time.